Have you ever seen a police dog freeze in place, not from fear, but as if it sensed something no human ever could? No barking, no hesitation, just one step away from boarding the helicopter. And that single moment may have saved a dozen lives. If you believe that a police dog is more than just a tool, that they carry instincts shaped by something deeper, then you're exactly where you need to be. Drop a comment below. Have you ever trusted an animal's intuition over a person's? And if stories like this move you, we'd be honored to have you subscribe and walk this path with us. Now let me take you to the moment it all began. At a fog-covered airfield, where a silent standstill rewrote the rules of trust. The fog over Grayridge Tactical Airfield wasn't just weather, it felt like a warning. Lieutenant Lyra Northwood stood beside her K-9 partner, Rook, watching the hangar lights shimmer against the morning mist. At just past 5:40 a.m., the world hadn't fully woken up. But Rook had. The Belgian Malinois shifted his weight, muscles taut, eyes scanning the emptiness like it was alive. He always knew before she did. Always. The mission had been rehearsed to perfection. VIP air escort, aerial overwatch, smooth in and out. But Lyra knew better. Nothing about mornings like this ever stayed quiet. A gust of wind whispered across the tarmac, bringing with it the faint scent of jet fuel. And something else, something only one pair of lungs could truly register. "Let's make it count today, partner," she murmured, adjusting Rook's vest. He didn't blink, didn't wag, just stood there, waiting for something she couldn't name. Behind them, the rotors of the Bell 429 Ravenhawk helicopter began to churn. Captain Quentin Frost, already halfway through his pre-flight checks, tossed her a glance and a nod. "Wheels up in 20, he called. "You and the dog good to fly?" She opened her mouth to answer. But Rook had already turned his head, not toward Frost, not toward her, toward the aircraft, eyes locked, posture still, a fraction too focused. It was nothing. Probably nothing. But she'd learned one thing in her years with this dog. Nothing meant everything. Rook didn't move. Not even when Lyra gently tugged on the lead. Not when Quentin Frost's voice cut through the morning air. "Northwood, everything okay down there?" She didn't answer immediately, because the dog beside her wasn't just hesitating. He was listening to something she couldn't hear, to something beyond protocol or logic. Not this again, she thought, remembering the warehouse incident last fall. The day Rook refused to enter, ears up, eyes locked. Everyone had laughed, until they found the gas leak. This didn't feel like defiance. It felt like déjà vu. Lyra crouched beside him, scanning his posture. Not fear, not fatigue, but tension. A stillness honed by thousands of hours of training. "Rook," she whispered. "Talk to me the only way you know how." The Malinois shifted, just slightly, one paw forward, then stopped again. His head turned, gaze fixed on the helicopter's rear section, a part no one had looked at. Not yet. Quentin was watching from the side ramp now, his brow furrowed. "We need to move, Lieutenant." But Lyra stayed where she was, hand resting on her partner's back. She felt it, that pause, that eerie stillness before every storm, and in it, one unshakable truth. Rook had never been wrong. Never. She rose, breath steadying. "Sir, I'm requesting a delay." A pause, then her voice clear. "I trust my dog, and I think we need to look again." For a split second, no one moved. Then, the pressure cracked through the stillness. "We don't have time for this, Northwood." Quentin's voice wasn't angry, just edged with the sharpness of experience and the weight of the ticking clock. Behind him, the Ravenhawk's rotors had begun to churn with a low growl. Not unlike Rook's when something wasn't right. Lyra turned slightly, hands still steady on her partner. "Give me 2 minutes, that's all I ask." "Make it 1. Lieutenant Maddox, unit commander, had joined them now, imposing, impatient. But his gaze briefly lingered on the dog. She unclipped Rook's lead. He moved, not like a dog distracted, like a detective with purpose. Every step deliberate, each inhalation an equation. 1 loop around the aircraft. 2. Then he stopped. Not near the cockpit, not the cabin. Tail section, right where the boom met the fuselage. Rook sat, completely still. The formal alert, no bark, no whimper, just a silent, "This is it." Lyra's pulse kicked. Not again. Not this kind of silence. She called out, clear, unwavering. "He's found something. I want that panel opened." Maddox hesitated. Frost had already moved. "I'll do it myself," the pilot muttered, grabbing the tools. No more arguments, no more protocol, just action. Inside the aircraft, the tactical team leaned toward the window, watching, waiting. The mood had changed, from hurry to hush. Because when a police dog stops the mission, you stop too. The sound of the drill biting into the tail panel sliced through the tension like a blade. Captain Frost worked fast, focused, no chatter. Rook didn't move an inch. Lyra stood behind him, arms crossed tight, not from defiance, from restraint. She didn't want to think about what might be inside. She just needed someone else to see it. The last screw came off. Frost pulled the panel free. A beat of silence. Then, "Hold up!" His voice dropped, not loud, but shaken. Lyra stepped forward. "What is it?" He didn't answer at first, just leaned in, ran his fingers along a narrow seam, then froze again. "There's a fracture." Maddox approached now, all urgency gone. "Stress line?" Frost nodded slowly. "It's not visible from the outside. No leak, no heat damage. But inside the control rod, there's a crack." Lyra felt her stomach drop. "That's tail rotor control," Frost added, more to himself than anyone else. "In turbulence, that'd be a death sentence." No one spoke. Even Rook seemed stiller than before, like he understood what they just found. And then, "This isn't natural." Frost's voice was flat now, distant. "What do you mean?" Maddox asked, sharp. He didn't look up. "Pattern's wrong. The pressure points, it's too uniform." A pause, then 3 words Lyra never expected to hear that morning. "This looks deliberate." Lyra didn't flinch. Not when the words "looks deliberate" hit the air like a cold slap. Not even when Maddox barked into his comms, "Get me security footage from the last 72 hours. Hangar access only. Now." She just kept one hand on Rook's vest. "You were right again, weren't you?" Frost stood up slowly, wiping metal dust from his fingers. "You don't get fractures like that from wear and tear. It's targeted. Pressure applied in just the right place to weaken it, without snapping it during checks." Lyra looked at the fracture again. It was almost elegant, precise, sabotage. Not just a word now, a reality. "What happens if it fails in flight?" Maddox asked. "Tail rotor control collapses," Frost replied. "Best case? You spin out and hope there's flat ground to crash into." "And the worst?" He didn't answer. The other officers, tough men, tactically trained, had fallen silent, because even they knew what that meant with VIPs on board. Rook gave a low huff, almost annoyed, as if the humans were just now catching up. "We almost boarded that death trap." Lyra's throat tightened at the thought. She locked eyes with Rook for a moment. Not just instinct. He knew. Across the tarmac, the comms officer called out, "Footage coming through now. 2 entries flagged for after-hours access." Everyone turned. Frost spoke first. "Let's find out who tried to bury a massacre under our own helicopter." The footage flickered onto the screen. 2 figures. One time-stamped at 2:17 a.m. 2 nights ago. Clear entry. But no scheduled maintenance was logged. Maddox swore under his breath. "Zoom in." The face was partially obscured, cap pulled low, hoodie raised. But the body language, too comfortable, too familiar with the space. This wasn't trespass, it was access. "Check badge logs," Maddox barked. "We need a name, now." But Rook had already moved. No command, no signal. He broke formation, nose to the floor, weaving between crates and gearboxes like a shadow with purpose. "Rook!" Lyra called instinctively, but stopped herself. Let him work. He disappeared behind a supply rack, only to reappear seconds later, tail straight, posture taut. He was following something. Not a person, a memory, chemical, metallic, distinct. Frost knelt near him as the dog slowed, sniffed a toolbox, then growled low. Not aggressive, confirming. That's where he prepped, Frost muttered. A pause. Then the comms officer again, voice sharp. Got a name. Ryan Denton, civilian contractor. Logged access at 0215. Supposed to be off-site. Maddox looked at Lyra. You recognize the name? She nodded slowly. Used to work avionics. Got pulled last year for performance issues. Frost stood, eyes narrowing. So why the hell is he touching my aircraft? The air changed again. This wasn't just a mechanical anomaly. It was a message. And Rook? He was already moving toward the exit. Rook didn't wait for approval. He was already halfway across the tarmac, nose to the wind. Lyra followed, jogging now. Maddox signaled 2 officers to flank her. Frost stayed behind, coordinating comms. The hunt had begun. The scent trail was faint, almost washed out by fuel exhaust in morning fog. But Rook locked on like a bloodhound possessed. He led them past the supply shed, around the maintenance corridor, then stopped, head lifted, a low growl. Lyra slowed beside him, scanning the open lot. To most, it looked empty, just a concrete expanse between 2 hangars. But Rook wasn't looking at the ground. He was staring at a black sedan parked crooked near the security fence. One window cracked. A duffel bag sat in the back seat. Rook's posture shifted, ears forward, weight evenly distributed. This wasn't just scent memory anymore. This was presence. Back, Lyra whispered, motioning the officers. She approached alone, heart hammering. She reached the driver's side. Empty. Then a blur of movement inside the passenger mirror. A man, moving fast. Go! She didn't need to tell Rook twice. He launched. The chase was short, but furious. Around the shed, over a barrier. The man ran like someone who'd already lost, until Rook cut him off, hard. A snarl, a lunge, a body crashing down. Then silence, breathing, panting, and the soft clink of handcuffs. The scent trail had ended, but the real story? It was just beginning. They brought him in fast, hands cuffed, shirt torn, breath ragged. Ryan Denton, civilian contractor, former avionics, now suspect in attempted sabotage. But when they sat him down in the gray-walled interview room, something was off. No resistance, no anger, just a strange kind of calm. Lyra stood behind the mirror, Rook beside her, silent, waiting. Across the glass, Maddox led the questioning. You accessed the hangar after hours. Why? No answer. You touched a secured aircraft without clearance. Why? Still nothing. Then, didn't mean to hurt anyone. His voice cracked, low, measured, honest. Maddox leaned forward. Then what the hell was your plan? Denton blinked slowly. Wasn't a plan, it was a favor. A pause. To who? Denton looked up. Guy who used to run flight operations. Lost his job after the contract changed hands. Twist. They told me to make the rotor fail, just enough to ground the bird. Not kill anyone, just delay things. So the governor would miss her keynote. 'Cause embarrassment. Stir the pot. Maddox's jaw clenched. Corporate sabotage. Not politics, not terrorism, business. I didn't know about the weather or the turbulence risk. They said it'd be fine. And then, as if on cue, Rook growled. Not loud, but unmistakably disappointed. Lyra whispered half to herself, You never planned on anyone paying the price, except us. Denton looked toward the glass, and for the first time looked ashamed. The confession hit hard, but what came next hit harder. Lyra sat across from Frost and Maddox in the debriefing room, a quiet tension settling between them. Rook lay at her feet, head up, ears half tilted, listening, always listening. Maddox reviewed the intel packet just delivered from internal ops. It wasn't good. Denton wasn't lying, he said, eyes scanning the printed lines. But he also wasn't the one who granted him hangar access. Lyra looked up. What do you mean? Frost leaned in. His keycard pinged at the gate, but it was reactivated less than an hour before the breach. By who? She asked, already dreading the answer. Maddox hesitated, then slid the document toward her. A name, an ID, an active officer. Still serving. Silence. Lyra's fingers curled slowly into fists. The sabotage hadn't been just a contractor's desperation. It had been facilitated from within. Rook shifted. A low breath in his chest, not quite a growl. He felt it too. The betrayal didn't stop at the door. Pull his record, Lyra said softly. Every deployment, every transfer. I want to know who's protecting him. Frost's voice lowered. I've flown with that man. The weight in his tone was unmistakable. This wasn't about one helicopter anymore. It was a crack in the spine of the entire unit. And the worst part? That crack had always been there. The name on the file felt like a blade. Sergeant Calder Brandt, veteran crew chief, decorated, trusted, and now suspected. Lyra stared at the dossier, her breath shallow. You flew with him, you ate beside him. She remembered Rook barking once when Brandt passed too close during an inspection. Back then, she chalked it up to nerves. Now, it felt like a warning she'd ignored. We bring him in? Maddox asked, voice tight. Frost shook his head slowly. He's not at home. His unit says he took personal leave yesterday. Where? Maddox flipped through the system, then froze. Airport storage access, North Compound, 4 hours ago. Without a word, Lyra stood. Rook was already by the door, waiting. They reached the compound in under 10 minutes. Rows of storage units, wind whistling through steel corridors. Rook sniffed the air once, then bolted left, Unit 41B. He scratched once, then sat, still, focused. Lyra drew her weapon, nodding to the backup team. Bang! Hinges cracked. The door swung open. Inside, not Brandt, not yet, but gear, files, photos, blueprints of the Ravenhawk, old maintenance schedules marked with red ink, a second home, or a fallback plan. And on the wall, a pinned patch from a disbanded squadron, a unit dissolved 5 years ago for misconduct. Lyra stared. He wasn't just sabotaging aircraft. He was resurrecting something buried. The patch on the wall stopped everyone cold. Faded stitching. A winged skull wrapped in barbed wire. Unit 77 Echo Vanguard. Lyra's pulse tightened. She'd heard whispers during academy training. A covert unit. Ground-air hybrid. Specialized in black zone operations. Officially dissolved after a failed mission overseas. Unofficially, erased. Frost stepped closer. That's not just some patch. That's history someone tried to burn. Maddox's voice was barely above a whisper. I thought they scrubbed all records after Coast Valley. So did she. But Rook didn't care about buried history. He was locked onto a new scent now, eyes sharp, head lowered. He padded toward a locked cabinet, scratched once, then sat. They pried it open. Inside, field logs, handwritten, classified identifiers, blacked out with ink, still visible under UV. Dozens of them. Brandt hadn't just kept files. He'd rebuilt fragments, archived them, stored everything they weren't supposed to remember, and tucked between the folders. A torn photograph. 5 soldiers in desert gear. One face circled in red. Brandt. Younger. Hardened. Standing beside another man, smiling faintly. Lyra froze. She knew that face. Not from the unit, not from any deployment, but from yesterday morning. He was part of the governor's secondary escort. Frost saw it too. That man's on active detail. Today, Rook let out a low growl. Not of fear, of recognition. The photograph shook in Lyra's hand. The man beside Brandt. Captain Thorne Maddox. No rank insignia, no visible identification. But it was him, younger, different haircut, same eyes, cold, calculating. Frost leaned in, barely breathing. That's not possible. But it was. The face hadn't changed, just the uniform. Lyra's mind raced. Maddox hadn't been assigned to Grayridge until last year. No direct combat record. And yet, he'd slipped into command like he belonged. Because maybe he had. Not as a replacement, but as a relic. One they didn't know they were reviving. Rook growled. Deep, primal. He didn't growl at photographs, he growled at scent. And that scent was nearby. Lyra turned. The hallway behind the unit echoed. Footsteps, slow, unhurried. Then, Maddox, standing in the light of the open doorway, calm, almost expectant. "You weren't supposed to find this," he said softly. No anger, no panic, just inevitability. Lyra reached for her sidearm. Frost mirrored her. Maddox didn't move. "You think I sabotaged a tail rotor? Please, I built this house. I don't need to break it to burn it down." He knew every access, every blind spot. And still, Rook stepped forward. Not to attack, but to stand between them. A wall of instinct, a line that even ghosts had to cross. The air was razor thin. No one spoke. Not Lyra, not Frost. Even Rook held his breath. Maddox took a slow step forward, unarmed, unbothered. "You were never supposed to find Unit 77, he said. His voice wasn't defensive. It was almost nostalgic, like a man talking about a ghost he never quite buried. Lyra kept her sidearm up, but inside, something twisted. This man had briefed her, led their unit, covered her flank in the mountains, or so she thought. "What was the plan, Thorne?" she asked quietly. Maddox looked at her. "To remind them," he said, "that the system they trust was built on shadows. We were created for missions no one talks about, then discarded when the narrative changed." He gestured to the storage behind them. "Brant never wanted revenge. He wanted memory. I gave it purpose." Frost's voice cut in, sharp, cold. "You sabotaged a flight carrying the governor." "No," Maddox replied. "I sabotaged Faith. That's what scares them more." Rook stepped forward, low growl vibrating through his chest. Still not attacking, just watching, weighing. "You trained him well," Maddox said, glancing at Rook, "but you missed the lesson." Lyra steadied her aim. "What lesson?" He smiled. "Loyalty isn't earned in silence. It's tested in fire." The hallway filled with sirens. Backup was coming. But for Lyra, this was already the loudest kind of betrayal. The sirens grew louder, closer. Lyra's finger hovered over the trigger, but something inside her refused to move. Rook remained between them, not growling now, just standing, a wall, a question. Maddox didn't flinch. "You think the truth can be contained in reports and briefings?" His voice wasn't loud, but every word sliced. "I was erased to protect people who don't bleed for what they command." Frost took a step forward, weapon still raised. "This isn't about justice for you, it's ego." "No," Maddox said. "It's memory, and it's finally being heard." Lyra looked at Rook. He wasn't confused. He was calm, because Rook wasn't waiting for orders. He was watching her decide. The silence stretched, and then Lyra lowered her weapon. Not out of weakness, but clarity. "I'm not going to shoot you, Thorne," she said quietly, "but you're not walking away." Maddox gave a tired smile. "Wasn't planning to." Outside, boots pounded the asphalt. Officers shouting, radios flaring. Lyra stepped aside. Let the uniformed swarm flood in. Maddox didn't resist. He looked back just once, at Rook, and nodded, as if to say, "You were always the one who saw through it first." Rook didn't respond, but he didn't need to. Some choices don't echo in violence. They echo in restraint. The dust hadn't even settled. Maddox was in custody, the hangar sealed, the story on the surface contained. But Lyra knew better. She stood alone at the edge of the runway, the echo of sirens long gone. Beside her, Rook sat, unmoving. Not because the threat was gone, but because the weight was still there. There's always more. In her hand, the torn photo from the storage unit. She flipped it, scrawled handwriting on the back, barely legible. Coast wasn't the last. The real op started after. CB called her Brant, a postscript buried behind time. Her breath caught. The real op? She remembered the stories, the failed exfil, the silence that followed. But what if that silence had only been the beginning? Frost approached quiet. "No one's talking about what happens next." "I know," she replied, "but this doesn't end with Maddox." Frost handed her a new file. Unmarked, no seal. "Came through internal this morning. Flagged under your name. She opened it. Photos, reports, maps, coordinates. A single phrase at the top burned into the header. Operation Veil Dogs, active. Rook stirred, ears perked, nose lifted. He recognized something. Not scent. Vibration. Somehow the mission had never ended. Only gone quiet. The file sat heavy in Lyra's hands. Not because of the weight, but because of what it might unearth. Operation Veil Dogs. The name alone felt wrong, as if spoken through gritted teeth by ghosts. She laid the papers out on the table in the K9 unit side office. No badges, no digital trails, just old maps. Satellite overlays, aerials of abandoned military test zones, and kennel schematics. Rook stood behind her, silent, then suddenly stepped forward. He pressed his nose to one corner of the document and froze. No sound, no warning, just alert. Lyra leaned in. There was nothing visible, but something was embedded. She flipped the page. Taped beneath, a faded photo of dogs in lined cages. None of them looked healthy, and in the background, a figure barely in focus. It wasn't Brandt, wasn't Maddox. It was her former handler, Sergeant Ellis Wade, the man who trained her before she earned her badge, the one who'd vanished after a voluntary retirement. Her breath caught. She reached for her phone, but paused, because Rook was staring at the photo, not growling, whining, software, low, like grief. He remembers, not the image, the man, the smell. Lyra whispered, "How deep does this go, boy?" Rook didn't answer, but his silence screamed. They said Sergeant Ellis Wade retired quietly. No ceremony, no notice. Just gone. Lyra believed it. Back then she was still a rookie handler, too green to question the gaps. But now, sitting across from the surveillance screen in the internal operations room, her hands shook slightly. Because Ellis Wade had just walked into an underground facility in Helston Ridge. Clear image. Facial recognition confirmed. Alive. Active. But not in uniform. Not in anything sanctioned. The footage paused. Wade handed off a sealed crate to an unmarked figure. Both turned away from the camera. But even with pixels and shadows, Rook stood. He growled, then barked. Once. Sharp. Instinctual. He remembers. Lyra swallowed hard. This wasn't just about an old ghost. This was his ghost. Wade had been Rook's first evaluator. First praise, first pain. And something in Rook's body language now wasn't fear. It was betrayal. "Pull every file linked to Helston Ridge," Lyra said. Frost narrowed his eyes. "You think Wade's still part of this?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because Rook did. He walked over to the screen, placed his paw on Wade's paused face, then turned to Lyra, like he was asking, "You still trust what they say?" She looked at the screen again, and for the first time, she didn't know. The coordinates pointed to a dead zone. No roads, no records, no reason for anyone to be there, unless they already knew. Lyra stood at the edge of a forgotten trail, the wind dry and electric. Behind her, the last signal bar blinked out on her radio. Ahead, only brush, dirt, and a silence that felt designed. Rook didn't hesitate. He walked forward like he remembered the shape of the path. Like he'd been here once, even if she hadn't. They moved slow. No lights, no chatter, just breathing. And then, a fence. Barbed, silent. Old but not broken. Maintained. The kind of place you don't stumble on. She reached into her vest pocket and removed the photo of Wade. Folded now, worn at the edges. "Why here?" she whispered. Rook sniffed the gate, then turned. Not toward the facility, but toward her. Eyes searching hers. Not fear. Warning. Lyra stepped closer, pressed her hand to the metal. The ground clicked beneath her boot. A pressure plate. She froze, then exhaled. This wasn't a place you entered by accident, and it wasn't built to be escaped. Frost's voice crackled in her earpiece, barely cutting through. "Lyra, this isn't reconnaissance anymore. If you step in, there's no cover, no backup." She looked at Rook. He didn't blink. Neither did she. And then she stepped forward. The corridor stretched longer than physics should allow. Concrete, fluorescent buzz, but no dust, no decay. This place was used. Lyra's boots echoed softly as she moved, Rook at her side. Slower now, not cautious, disturbed. The air was too clean, too still, like something didn't want to be noticed. They passed a row of sealed observation windows. She glanced once and froze. Inside, kennels, not cages, enclosures, each with names stenciled in faded black. Some crossed out, but not empty. One still held a dog, German shepherd, eyes clouded, movements stiff, too thin, too still, but breathing, a barcode branded behind its ear. And beside the enclosure, a nameplate, Echo 7. Lyra staggered back. She knew that name, from reports, from training logs, from Rook. Rook hadn't barked, hadn't growled. He whimpered. Then carefully he stepped forward, until his nose touched the glass. Inside, Echo 7 stirred, limped forward, and stopped, mirroring Rook. Two survivors, split by systems neither chose. Lyra whispered, "They never stopped the program." And then, a noise behind her, door unlocking, metal on metal, heavy, deliberate. She turned. Ellis Wade, alive, calm, wearing a badge that didn't belong to any agency she'd ever seen. "Welcome back, Officer Northwood," he said. His eyes glanced to Rook, then to Echo 7. "You were never supposed to find them both." Wade didn't run, didn't deny. He simply watched as Lyra stepped between him and Rook. No backup, no arrest order, just a quiet standoff built on memory. "We never meant for them to remember," he said, glancing toward Echo 7. Lyra kept her voice steady. "That's the thing about dogs. They don't forget what we train them to feel." Rook stood between them, still, unwavering, not because he feared Wade, but because he remembered everything. Lyra didn't pull her weapon. She didn't need to. Wade looked at Echo 7 through the glass. She was the first. Rook was the last. Everything in between was compromise. Lyra reached for the control panel, unlocked the enclosure. Echo 7 stepped out, slow, head low, but moving. She didn't lunge, didn't bite. She simply walked to Rook and touched her muzzle to his neck. A silence followed. No alarms, no violence. Just breathe, shared by those who were never meant to survive. Lyra turned to Wade. "This ends here." He didn't argue. Sometimes the deepest punishment is living with what you've built. If this story touched you, if something in Rook's journey reminded you of the quiet strength we often overlook, tell us in the comments. We'd love to know what moments stayed with you most, and if stories like this mean something to you. We hope you'll subscribe, not out of obligation, but because, maybe like Rook, you too believe in loyalty that outlives silence. Life lessons from this story. Sometimes the quietest beings carry the loudest truths. Rook never spoke, but he remembered. He remembered pain, training, betrayal, and still, he chose to protect. In a world where orders can be faked and loyalty exploited, Rook showed us that instinct, pure, unfiltered instinct, can still lead us to what's right. It's easy to believe that justice comes with sirens and headlines, but sometimes it arrives on silent pause, in a single look, in the refusal to walk forward when something feels wrong. This story reminds us that not everything broken is loud. Some systems fracture quietly, and sometimes it takes someone who can't speak to show us what we've stopped hearing. So here's the question. What do you sense but keep ignoring? What truth is standing in front of you, waiting, patiently, for you to believe it? Maybe we all need a Rook in our lives, or maybe we need to become someone else's, because loyalty once broken is hard to earn again. But when it's real, it doesn't fade, it waits until you're ready to see. Sometimes the ones who can't speak carry the truths we've all forgotten how to say. They don't raise their voices, they don't write reports, but they remember what we chose to forget. If Rook taught us anything, it's this. Heart loyalty doesn't ask for attention. It simply stands there, between right and wrong, and waits for you to decide. If something in this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Share it. Reflect on it. And if you're ready for more stories that don't just entertain, but reach something deeper, we'll be here with the next breath, the next truth, the next step pawed quietly in the dark. Until then, stay true, stay listening, and always trust what doesn't need words.